Which creepy urban legend turned out to be true? Out here in Washington there were rumors of a fairy house in the woods somewhere. One park ranger decided to go hunting for it, and he actually did find a tree house in the woods. When he looked inside he found a ton of child pornography. He took it down, and came back a while later, and found it had been put back up. They eventually found who had been using the tree house and arrested him. How dumb would the person have to be, to put it back up again in the same place? I live near a lake and there was an urban legend that there were huge lake monsters near the hydroelectric dam. Most people thought it was just some fisherman's tall tales. We all guessed it was just a twist on the classic The One That Got Away. Turns out divers went into the water behind the dam for a routine inspection to see if there was any damage after months of heavy flooding in the area. Apparently one of the divers got too close to what he originally thought was a large moss-covered rock/boulder until it moved and tried to latch onto the diver's arm. Apparently there are ± 200 pounds catfish behind the dam, which thrive on the dead fish that go through the hydroelectric portion of the dam. The agitated water makes it easier for the large catfish to breathe and grow past what is commonly found in the area. And the lack of fishes, as all commercial fishing is banned for at least 1,000 meters, means these fish are truly free to grow to truly enormous sizes. Indiana, my professor just mentioned a similar story last week while talking about cryptids. He said the divers refused to go back down. On a related note, apparently some divers have sighted giant snails in Loch Ness along the walls of the loch. We all joked that our middle school pet teacher was a pedophile. He got arrested a few years ago for taking pictures of the female students and trading them for child porn. Not creepy, but in my small rural hometown, there was a rumor that a bunch of city officials, cops, teachers, business owners, etc., basically anyone a kid would see as an authority figure, had massive orgies. Obviously as you grew up you, link in description, your senses, until one year, when a teacher's husband stomped the absolute shit out of a local business owner in broad daylight. Turns out the legend wasn't just a legend. His wife was apparently a member of what was called the Hot Tub Club and he wasn't invited. A good chunk of local leaders got outheaders hosting orgies somewhat regularly. I'm more surprised it was kept secret, as long as it was. It was only a legend for like a week, but a kid went missing on the same property we lived on and everyone thought his brother had something to do with it, but police said no, he was kidnapped. Turned out the brother had killed his brother and buried him in our backyard. It was only a legend for like a week. Oh, something childish and lighthearted. Continues reading. We had an older couple that would come into the store I worked at when I was 15. They clearly had mental development / mental health problems, and the rumor was they were siblings and the two teenage girls with them were their children. About 5 years later I'd find out someone had called the state about them, and turns out, from what I remember to be mostly true, the parents were apparently the result of incest, and they carried on the family tradition, as it were. I think the state removed their daughters and put them in state custody since they weren't able to take care of themselves. And I don't remember what happened to the parents. I understand the McPoyle bloodline is very strong. Untainted for thousands of years. In my hometown there was a local legend about a man who would sometimes be seen having sex with trees. Some called him Mr. Woodcock, but he was more commonly known as the tree shagger. I know it must be nonsense, but one night a friend and I were out walking his dog along a narrow, tree-lined lane. We heard a grunting sound from the undergrowth, and there he was. He was wearing a long overcoat which had wrapped around a poor innocent tree, and he had his trousers around his ankles as he defiled the shrubbery with a flagrant disregard for splinters. Considering all the animals, children, and adults that get molested by fuck whistles all the time, I'm glad to hear of just one pervert who molests trees instead. I'm always late to these things. In Kenya, Mombasa, there was a story about a woman with long black hair and a white dress who would be seen around the beach at night, and it was to stop people from being at the beach swimming in the ocean. Turned out to be true, as older lady would sleepwalk on the beach in her nighties, even she didn't know until locals found the courage to follow her home. When I was young living rural Ontario, we were told as children not to wander too far into the forest, saying that a monster would get us and we wouldn't come home. If anybody knows who rots their realtors, that actually turned out to be painfully true. Wikipedia article. Link in description. Link in description. That piece of shit is down on the range. Here's the knife. I sliced him up. 14. Guy who killed him in prison. Seems alright by me. I often wonder if Stephen King's Children of the Corn was based on a northern town in Maine. I don't recall the name of the town, but my friends and I stopped in on our way to the furthest US point east. The town struck me very weird, because every store clerk was like 14 to 17 maximum. Not just 1 or 2 stores every store, aside from ourselves. We did not come across one adult in the tour, so as we were there, it was a depressed town, nearly a ghost town, and left me with a really unsettled feeling. The second story in full dark no stars about the author sounds a little too true. I grew up in the area he talks about and there's all kinds of crazy like that. That story oddly sounds familiar and I've never looked into it mostly because I don't want to find any names I know attached to it. Black Volga. In the 60s and 70s, there existed an urban legend in Poland that vampires in black limousines were kidnapping people, preferably little children. It was a tale parents told their kids who would then tell their friends, etc. Turns out it was a rumor that was spread by the Polish secret police who actually used black cars to kidnap people. The aim was that no one would believe someone who would report they had witnessed a kidnapping. I remember being wary around all black cars, since I'd never seen a Volga. Also, I heard the version of the tale where they would kidnap people to steal their organs, and then dump their bodies by the road, which is messed up. The Asylum Lake tunnels in Kalamazoo are real. There is a small lake and wildlife area just off of WMU's campus, and for a long time there were rumors going around that they were still there and accessible. Well, turns out that was true and there was an old set of stairs that was partially buried that lead to a wild up tunnel entrance. A few people used hand tools and ended up breaking part of the wall down and got inside, only to find the tunnels fully intact albeit a bit damp and murky. Somehow the authorities got wind and went and sealed the entrance again, but it's still very obvious where that was if you are really looking for them. I live and work in the area and I will give you this advice. Don't go in those tunnels, you will be 100% prosecuted and will be in huge trouble. I just asked a KPS officer about them. He said they are unvented and extremely dangerous. Tell us more. Creepy Pete that used to hang out in the kids' pool every Saturday at the leisure center actually turned out to be a pedo. He got arrested a couple years ago. When we were little, the kids in the pool would swim through his legs and the parents would just laugh. Pedos were basically urban legends back then. Way too true now. When I was a kid, my dad would take me and my brother to High Rock, link in description. It's a neat overlook and we could play on the rocks. It was fun, but also a little sobering, as much as things can be for kids, because a girl had died in a hang gliding accident, if I remember right. As you drive up to the parking lot for the overlook, the road continues on into the woods. We asked our dad where it went, and he told us that you'd be driving down the road and suddenly armed guards would pop out of the woods to stop you, because there was a secret government base there. That's the case, except it isn't really secret. It's Raven Rock, link in description, which is a nuclear bunker that can act as a remote Pentagon if the country is attacked. Cheney went there during September 11th, while Bush was taken somewhere else. You will be detained if you trespass on the property. I went back to High Rock a few years ago while visiting family, and while hanging out at the overlook a truck of teenagers showed up. They asked if I knew what was up the access road, and I told them Raven Rock, and not to keep going, because they'd be detained. They decided they wanted to check it out anyway. An hour later, when I left High Rock, those kids had not come back yet. So I figured they were getting their asses chewed out by a soldier. Fun fact: Raven Rock is the headquarters of the Enclave in Fallout 3. The fun fact at the end instantly made me realize I knew what you were talking about, including High Rock. You get a great view of the Capitol Wasteland from it after you leave Raven Rock, unless it's another High Rock that's just similar. But, click. Not really an urban legend, but a fish cafe in my hometown says that its supports are made out of whale bones. Turns out many years ago a whale got stranded on a nearby island and died, and the owner took some rib bones and used it as arches for his business. Neat. XLIT. The North Pond Hermit, link in description. Things would go missing in this little vacation community and people attributed it to some mysterious dude. Turned out there was one. He lived out in the woods for 27 years without ever talking to anyone. Actually, he did talk to people. He said hi to a random hiker once, and that was the only time he talked to someone else during those 27 years. Hi, socializing, hey, tried it once, didn't care for it. The Griggstown cow, a supposed ghost cow that wandered New Jersey. It was said to only appear on foggy days, and would disappear soon after. Local authorities discounted reports of the ghost cow, of course. as there had not been any dairy farms in that area for decades and no one was missing any cattle nearby. Then in 2002, a very old and arthritic bull, which matched the description of the ghost cow, was found stuck in a ravine. The old bull was unable to climb out of the ravine on its own, and, due to the animal's poor health, local veterinarians decided that euthanasia was the best option. The cow must have escaped a dairy farm and lived in the wild for decades and avoided humans all that time. It's assumed that the bull was seen during fog because it couldn't see people coming as easily. How old is the legend? The average lifespan of cattle is only about 20 years. So if the story is older than that, it's most likely not just that one bull. Source: I grew up on a farm. I can't find any original sources since page was purged from Wikipedia, but most articles suggest that the first sighting was in 1972. They continued until the bull was found in 2002, and then stopped completely after that. I don't know if any cow can live to be 30, but the animal found in 2002 was definitely very old and weak. It stands to reason multiple cows cold escaped and helped perpetuate the legend, but as far as I know only one was found. It stands to reason multiple cows cold escaped and helped perpetuate the legend, or maybe the ghost cow lured a real cow into the ravine, so people would leave it alone. Takes off glasses dramatically, my god. This is a very recent and local story as it happened at a middle school that I used to attend. There was this janitor, though he actually left when I was still at the school, and substitute bus driver at our school that everyone loved. He would give all of the kids candy and show them around the areas of the school that kids weren't supposed to go, like the boiler room. I even heard that he ate dinner at a kid's house once. Even after he left the school he would still visit, sometimes just say hi to the kids. There were always some jokes that he was a pedophile, but everyone at the school loved him and thought that he was a great guy. Recently he was arrested for having thousands of pictures and videos of child porn. Makes things pretty weird in hindsight. Wait, was he the guy arrested with 58 terabytes of it? Luckily no, it doesn't say how much he had other than thousands. That creepy old guy living down the street was actually the Golden State Killer. He lived in my neighbor. I passed his house every day for years. I never talked to him, but it's crazy to think as kids we would play at the house 2 houses away from his. The second creepiest part of this is that he lived in your neighbor. Sewer alligators. If alligators and other animals are flushed or disposed of into plumbing, yeah, they can survive and hang out. The most famous Los Angeles alligator was Berdiiie, who now lives in a zoo. He was 6 feet long when captured and lived in a lake in South Bay for years. The rumors that Sergei Sabil, link in description, was a pedophile. It's now estimated he abused 500 children. And further to that, while still unconfirmed, the rumors, which he started, that he molested corpses while having now confirmed unsupervised access to NHS mortuaries are now more substantiated. He hid his pedophilia very well by looking exactly like everyone imagines a pedophile to look. Drive T of the Incredulous podcast on God Awful Movies podcast. He's so fucking creepy in the Louis Theroux documentaries. In Liverpool, kids are taught about Purple Aki from a young age. He's been locally known and feared for honestly 3 decades. He likes feeling boys' muscles and makes them do squats. He's completely real. He's even had court orders against him preventing him from feeling people's muscles. I hope you get raped by Purple Aki as a common insult and a very real fear. Akinwalero Beak, link in description, is his name. That is the weirdest Wikipedia article I've ever read. Cropsey, sort of like the bodhemon of Staten Island. During the 70s and 80s kids on the island would go missing, and the urban legend would attribute it to Cropsey. As it turned out there really was a crazy kidnapper and serial killer who was responsible. He was caught and convicted. There is a great documentary about it, used to be on Netflix. Not sure if it still is, called Cropsey. Check it out if you get a chance. Yeah, it's still on Netflix. Not in the US. Ironic. They could make documentaries for others, but not for themselves. Raymond Robinson, the Green Man. Dude lost his eyes and nose and wandered the streets at night in Pennsylvania because he couldn't go outside in the daytime because of how he looked. People saw him, and an urban legend in PA was born. I heard he was actually a really nice guy. that there's something making people disappear in our area in Nevada. As a kid it was more, so they were hinting at aliens. Then as we grew up the disappearances have been a little too eerie and it's been suspected that there's investigations that have been going on as to whether or not there's a serial killer in our area. Here's an article. Link in description. On it, I carry a firearm when traveling through and don't stop until I get to the cities. If you guys are ever coming through, just don't stop for anyone, especially after the darkness sets in. Well, that's not terrifying at all. The red ghost, the huge, cloven-footed creature that terrorized southeast Arizona, was no figment of the mind. The grisly story of its origin and fate was more macabre in fact than any fiction. Link in description. I was hoping for a picture in that article. I went to a university near Valley Forge, PA. It used to be a POW camp and a military hospital before the college bought the entire property for $1 in the 1960s. Since there are really only 3 universities near Valley Forge, PA will not be hard to deduce which college it was, lol. Anyways, there was a rumor that underground tunnels and all sorts of stuff was left abandoned in the abandoned sections of the college. Sure enough, it was true. We found a tunnel hatch under our carpet in our dorm room. 2 hatches on the first floor, furthest most first floor dorm room of each building. It was literally like stepping into 1945. Everything was preserved down there, and the tunnels were massive. We eventually ended up in an underground garage, where there were 4 Jeeps parked but all the tires had dry rotted. We realized this was actually beneath our soccer field. Anyways, the tunnels lead to the cafeteria, the admin building, every dorm, and then an old abandoned section of our campus that we had no way of entering topside. We soon realized this was a hospital/morgue. When we got out of the tunnels and walked the floor, it was still like 1945. All the hospital beds were still there. The surgical curtains were still there. Hell, even the tools, like the scalpel, saw, pliers, etc. were still on their trays. It was like everyone all of a sudden up and left and nothing had been moved since then. The morgue still had its slabs and sometimes we would dare each other to slide in there for a period of time. But yeah, it was an urban legend on campus until 3 of us decided to risk expulsion to see if it was true. And it was. Plot twist: tunnels led you to different times. The man that worked in a law firm on the 24th story of a building. As a running gag, he would tell everyone that the windows in the building were unbreakable, then proceed to run at one of them full force. Once, he did it, and the glass didn't break, but the window popped out of the frame, and he fell to his death 24 stories. I saw this on an urban legend show when I was a kid, but found out later that this really happened in my city, Toronto, Canada. My boyfriend works in the same building, and rumor has it that the man landed on a concrete bench at concourse level. A woman and her child had just been sitting there minutes before his fatal plunge. Link in description. Link in description. Yeah, my mom worked in an office adjacent to where he fell to his death. Everyone was sent home early in all of the buildings around it. Apparently, he had been doing this stunt for quite a while with the tour groups, and the problem was that he always used the same window. Each time he did it, he was weakening the window until it just couldn't take it anymore. Just saw 3 commenter in a row about Purple Aki. Guess I won't be going to Liverpool anytime soon. Freddy Krueger is based on a real story. Hear me out. There's a small ethnic group local to Southeast Asia, the Hmong people. They've been oppressed for years by various countries, so they fought with the US during the Vietnam Civil War. As you know, we lost, and the North Vietnamese were gearing up to kill the Hmong people who had fought for the Southern Vietnamese. So the US airlifted a bunch of Hmong families to the US, primarily in California and Minnesota. One of the recent immigrants was a young man. He was perfectly healthy, but suddenly died in his sleep. No one knew how he died. It's guessed it was a heart attack, but an autopsy wasn't done. This sent a panic throughout the community. There is a Hmong legend of a spirit that enters your dreams and kills you. Hmong people were terrified. They were also in a new community without access to some old traditions to protect them. Young men started staying awake, trying to avoid the monster. They downed caffeine. They were actually scared enough that it caused stress to their hearts and they died. Eventually, 117 men died from Hmong sleeping sickness. The article is here. Link in description. This is interesting since I'm Hmong and have never heard this before. I'm not surprised though.